Hello world of YouTube, it's time to talk about the albums of the year, 2017. Now, I've already talked about this year in music on the worst albums list, so I'm not going to recap that. I already talked about my honorable mentions for this list, so I'm not going to talk about that. I can't say words, but I will discuss one album in particular, because it was on a few of my contemporaries, my colleagues, as it were, of the year list, and that's Run the Jewels 3. Now, while it was dropped technically last year, it was also technically dropped within a lot of people's calendar years for this year. You know, a lot of people do their end of the year lists well before Run the Jewels 3 dropped, and people put it on this year, and I understand that. I have a tentative list that I run. I talked about it on Red, my listography. It's on there. If I were talking about where it would have fit in my top 50 of last year, if that were thrown in there, it'd be at number 9. Now you know. Now you know. It's not going to be on here, and I do apologize. But let's get into the list anyway. These are my top 20 albums of 2017. I didn't think Dalek were going to follow up Asphalt for Eden so soon, and when they announced that they had an album dropping this year, I didn't think it was going to be this good. I actually like this thing more than Asphalt for Eden. I think the dense sonic atmosphere of this thing that they're toying with is more akin to their Golden Age material. There's still some of that sereneness that was on Asphalt for Eden, but more often than not, there is a lot of harsh, fuzzy, digital distortion, while MC Dalek just kind of spouts his stuff that he's known for under it. It fits more snugly into the discography than parts of Asphalt for Eden did, and overall I think it's just a more cohesive project as a result. One of the things I did this year, since a lot of bands that I liked were releasing disappointing records, was invest time in other bands that had critical acclaim. Fleet Foxes was one of them, and I fucking love this thing. I really liked the very abstract, airy atmosphere and song structure of a lot of the songs on here. I like the tone of this thing. I think it's very inviting and very welcoming, but also challenging at the same time. It's engaging with its audience, and I didn't think I would get that for some reason from a project from a band like this. I know these guys have critical acclaim, I just never gave them the time of day, and I'm so glad that I did, because I walked away really enjoying a lot of the ideas thrown together on this thing, and it was a welcome change to my tastes, because I like folk music, and I like ambition, and this melded those two together in a way that was kind of surprising to me. This is the record a lot of people were wanting the physical world to be, and I definitely appreciate this more than that record. Not to discredit that record fully, because I do enjoy it, but I do think this, all in all, feels like a better follow-up to Euro 1, I'm a Machine. It even kind of thematically picks up where that record left off, because Sexy Results has this kind of swagger to it that carries into a lot of the swagger on this. This one's not as punky, but I don't blame it for that. I think it was an interesting direction for them to go in, because it does still have its more energetic, punkier moments, but there are a lot more tracks that kind of break things down and let them kind of flex their musical muscles in a different way, and it expands their sound beautifully. Also, I like that they added more pianos like what were present on a few tracks on You're a Woman, I'm a Machine. There was a lot of duos that made music this year, but these two, the juggernauts, the classics guys, came through with a bona fide, damn good record. I checked this out of pure whim. I checked this not knowing anything about these guys. I knew who Fleet Foxes were going into their record. I didn't know who the fuck these guys were, and I walked away so in love with this thing. This thing speaks to me in a lot of ways that tick a lot of those boxes I like in a lot of heavier rock music. It's not metal, but it's got metal tendencies. It's like if Crack the Sky, one of my favorite metal albums, was a lot more drawn out and a lot more expansive, and also a lot more dense. The guitar work on this is so muddy and so dense. The vocals, when they do cut through the mix, it's not a huge a reoccurrence. You know, the vocals kind of meld with these mixes very well, and these mythical lyrics that they're singing about suit these long, drawn-out, dense song structures very well. I definitely want to dig more into these guys' catalog because this was a huge breath of fresh air to me in a way that I wasn't expecting, even though bands that do stuff like this also put out quality records this year.
Away from the fact that she was right, so I triple left trying to double back. The streets are filled with some clues like how I ain't noticed that. Fuck it, I see some familiar stuff.
He did it. Tyler Boy dropped the record I've been wanting to drop since Bastard. While I have not hated Tyler's really juvenile side of his music, tracks like Bastard are what really drew me into Tyler's sound. Bastard alone is one of my favorite hip-hop songs ever made. And I was wanting him to do a lot more serious subject matter in his music because of that. And I think he executes that brilliantly. I love that he's matured his sound, but he doesn't lose that energetic juvenile tendencies. But those tracks that have it, those bangers, bang really well. I Ain't Got Time is my favorite cut on the album, and it is a certified trunk knocker. It is a glorious tune, but other tracks like Garden Shed and stuff really tap into a lot of lyrical ideas I was wanting Tyler to tackle. I was hoping he would mature his sound eventually, and I think this is his first full holistic product since 2009, and I love this thing as a result. And I hope, like I said on the podcast, it snatches that rap Grammy. Yeah, I put a film soundtrack on here. That's not something foreign to me either if you follow this channel. I really love the atmosphere on this thing, and when watching this movie in the theaters, the low end on this soundtrack was too much for my movie theater speakers. I could hear it shaking the speakers themselves, and that's just impressive. This thing is all about tone and atmosphere and entrapping the listener in this very dystopian sci-fi future, and it does it beautifully. There's some really good tense moments, a lot of really good tense moments on here, while also balancing that with a huge dose of serenity. And I love the balance that this thing strikes. There's a lot of remakes of the Vangelis songs from the first Blade Runner, and I think they're done really well. Plus, Suspicious Minds, my favorite Elvis song, is on the soundtrack, which is fucking cool. So Slowdive decided to exercise a more smooth ambience on the return, and I'm not upset with that. I really like the more serene soundscape that they toy with this time around. It's almost a comforting album to listen to. I really like the soothing guitar lines with the lush melodies from the vocals, and I think it ties itself together really well with more dream pop driven songs balanced with these somber piano ballad pieces. And it's just a really comforting album to listen to. It's almost like sitting down with a hot cup of cocoa by the fireplace, but it's a shoegaze album. Now, I may not like it as much as the Melanaut did, but I do actually thoroughly enjoy this project. And it's interesting because Mark from the podcast told me to check this out because we were going to talk about it. We still haven't, but we do have very different opinions about this. And I think that, because I have listened to a little bit of I Love You Honey Bear now, and I do like this step his sound is taken. I think it makes sense for him as an artist given what he was dabbling in last year. I think the lyricism on this is also a great step forward and makes sense given the type of artist he's been rubbing elbows with. I think that his continued growth as an artist in notoriety suits this very lull, ironic lyricism that he's wanted to pen forth. This bitter cynicism works, especially with this soundscape. He almost sounds like Tom Waits, but can sing and wants to write about super pretentious things, and I'm fine with that. You know, I love this very Elton John-esque atmosphere that he's working with sonically as well. I think these very slow, methodical songs suit these ideas he's toying with lyrically, and I fucking love it. I really enjoy sitting down and listening to this record and just indulging in this this artist reflecting on the culture he has been so readily embraced in such a fantastic way. I've heard a lot of people compare Glassjaw to the Deftones, and it didn't click with me until this album. These guys definitely sound like a more erratic version of one of my favorite alternative metal acts, and that's not a bad thing. The now former Dillinger Escape Plan's drummer is all over this thing, and he sounds great. The band sounds as erratic as ever, and they match that with these really nice, oddball vignettes of musical adventure. You know, there's not a cohesive narrative to this thing, but there is a follow-through with their sound that I think works really well. I like tracks like Pompeii that are just kind of really odd drum passages. There's a lot of really odd ideas on this thing that I think are executed really well in this kind of post-hardcore-y alternative metal funnel. They meld the two styles very well, and the vocalist is the closest to Chino he's ever sounded, which isn't a bad thing in my book, because I like Chino Moreno. I hopped aboard the hype train, and I haven't stopped, baby. I love Brockhampton, and Saturation 1 was a hell of a start to their kind of flourishment into the public eye, as it were. God damn, do these guys just captivate me. I love their chemistry. I love their soundscape. That whole Odd Future for college students thing kind of works. I don't know. I like that they have an unabashed appreciation for their contemporaries enough to show their influences while also expanding on that in their own unique way. I like the rock spin that's on this album that isn't super present on the other two records they put out this year. I like that they're a band that can keep me interested for 3 albums in a year, something that I don't think anyone else has this year to this consistent level. But Saturation 1 alone is just a fantastic start to what has become a really interesting musical trilogy, musical journey to follow. These guys have a lot of ferocity, and they sound like newcomers, but I don't mind that. I like that they have they don't care about anything else other than to tell you who they are and where they're at, and hope that you'll relate to that if you do. It's just so cool. It's so nice, and it's just a good time. It's a really good time. I never thought I'd get the answer of what if King Crimson made a space rock album answered, but here we are. I didn't think these guys had this kind of sound in them, because I was introduced to these guys back in 2014 when they dropped Ujuba, which in my video version of my top 11 was my album of the year. I fucking love this thing. I love that they took that shoegazy sound, pulled it back a little bit, and let their more progressive influences show. I like the technicality, I like the classical nature of a lot of the soundscape on this thing. I think it sounds so old school in a really cool way. I'm a big King Crimson fan, and these guys didn't basically make a new King Crimson album, but they've come close. And it makes me actually really intrigued to see where they go with their sound next, if they want to dabble in other genres, in with this shoegazy, space rocky, prog rock sound. I don't know what they're going to do, but I think they've written some really interesting prog rock jams here. And I think these guys have the capacity to be one of the most interesting rock bands to follow nowadays. Another album, whose previous album was an album of the year, Algiers followed up their self-titled debut with a phenomenal follow-up. Part of me didn't expect to like this thing as much, just because I've been disappointed so much by music this year, but damn if these guys don't continue to be such a powerful force in underground music. I mean, the politically charged lyricism is on point, and it's never draining, unlike some acts that made political music this year. It sounds topical, it sounds poignant, it sounds forceful, and it doesn't sound like they're trying to make it that way. It's just natural for them. This melding of blues, punk, gospel, and industrial just still sounds so perfect. It sounds so perfect, and they throw in some really nice piano stuff and trap influences on a few tracks that work so well. This thing expands their sound in a way that makes sense for them, that should have been done and was executed masterfully. I cannot wait to see, like Kairon here say, I cannot wait to see where these guys go, because I also think these guys have the potential to be another one of those kind of really prominent figures in the independent rock scene, and I fucking love this thing. And I hope that this gets them a little more exposure, like this album's accolades that it's been gaining. I hope it gets them more attention, because they fucking deserve it. These guys are talented as shit. Yeah, I put memes on here. Do you blame me for putting memes on here? This thing's a fucking masterpiece. This year has been hard on people, and especially me. The socio-political landscape has been a madhouse, and sometimes I just needed a break. This was one of those breaks, and it came early in the year. It is a practice in absurdity in the greatest way. Neil Cicierega seemed to put a lot of care into this project, a lot more than the last two albums, and that shows with the tracks that he dropped shortly after this album came out that were offcuts, that were B-sides. He put a lot of care into how this thing flowed, and I think it flows beautifully. I think, and it's weird to say that for a mashup album, but this is a new level in mashup album entertainment. Like, I haven't loved a mashup album this much since Shit Computer by Kids and Explosions. Like, this is amazing, and this was a big year for Neil, and I think he killed it on the music scene. I think it's fucking great. I just, so many instant classic hilarity on this thing. As my number 7, fucking Fight Me. I think this album is not that bad. It's warranted so many more re-listens for me than a lot of people seem to want to give it. I mean, not only is the first half of it just perfectly paced, it closes itself out really well, and with a couple of well-balanced, more drawn-out tracks. There's a lot to digest on this record in such a tight, small package that I feel like it's kind of shocking to me that people aren't loving this thing as much as they are in the internet music scene. I think the production's great, personally. I was waiting for this ever since they worked on Joanne. I was hoping it would be this good, and while some tracks have grown on me, I think tracks like The Way You Used to Do work better in the context of the record. I fucking love this thing. I think it's, like I said, a nice, tight package. John Theodore's the best drummer they've had since Dave Grohl, and the rest of the band just plays off of each other really well here with a small myriad of ideas that both expand and reflect on their career thus far. Like Tyler, the Creator, I've been waiting for Big KRIT to do an album like this. This thing is just not only a love letter to Southern hip-hop in so many fucking ways. Big KRIT really flexes his muscles as a rapper in so many different ways. His flows are some of the tightest they've ever been. His lyrical subject matter is akin to what he's done up to this point in his career, but it feels fresh. The way it's written feels fresh. I like the production on this thing so much. There are so many soulful, bluesy cuts, and again, there are so many instances on here that feel like just slices of Southern hip-hop dispersed throughout the track listing. It's essentially this decade's speaker box, but I like it a little more, and I'm a huge Outkast fan, but I think this works better as a concept than as an album, and I think Big KRIT executed something incredibly well here. I was scared when I saw that Big KRIT was doing a double album, because Big KRIT kind of oversaturated himself in the hip-hop scene throughout a good part of this decade, but I think him taking a break from music helped him craft something that is incredibly well put together. It is definitely not only one of the best hip-hop records to come out this year, but one of the best hip-hop records to come out this decade. It is a masterclass in how to make a double album work. and I fucking love it. I fucking love this thing. Again, I fucking love this thing. I don't get why people hate on it. I really don't get it. It's a great melding of some of the ideas presented on their more accessible work that are their last couple albums with the technicality and raw production that's present on their first couple of albums. I think this makes sense following Once More Around the Sun, especially with tracks like Show Yourself and the choruses to like Roots Remain. I love the lyrical topics on this. I love the concept of this album. I think it works well with Mastodon's sonic character. I think the band played their asses off on this thing, and they wrote a damn fine metal record here. This sat super high on my list from Listen 1, and it has not staved off any love from me. Constant re-listens of this thing have just done nothing but yield more accolades from me personally. I was shocked when a lot of people didn't like it, because it was one of the instances where I thought I would be disappointed given some of the singles that dropped, but I was ultimately super pleased with this. Again, I really fucking like this thing. But unlike the other records that I just defended, I understand people's distaste for this thing. Beck has never really sounded this digestible before, and there are moments on this that get super, super poppy, so basic, but I don't mind it. I think it's an interesting avenue for Beck to toy with. I kind of like this. My love of this is kind of akin to my love of Modern Guilt, because I'm a huge Modern Guilt defender, but I get it. I get why people don't like this thing. Tracks like Wow, I get why they don't wow people, but I mean, I fucking love that song, dude. I love the fucking flute line in it. This thing has a lot of moments like Wow, or even Dear Life that are kind of reflective in small pockets and small ideas to some of Beck's earlier work, and I think it comes together really well. I like the production on this thing. I think that it suits the songwriting style Beck's going for, and I think for his 13th LP, it was cool to see him dabble in pop. Beck's always been this guy to do a lot of new things, and I think he pulled this off really well. Up All Night is an undeniable hook. Same with Dear Life. Dear Life is an undeniable hook. There's Colors, Dreams. Dreams is a damn fine song, and I like the remix they did on this record. It's really good. It's a really good record, and I was hoping his follow-up would sound like this, given Dreams and Wow how they sounded, you know. With the end of Dillinger's Escape Plan last year, I wasn't sure if I would get this itch scratched again. And lo and behold, Converge dropped a fucking juggernaut album this year. This thing is so erratic, and it pleases me so much. I like how just unhinged the band sounds here. I like how fucking dense the songs get on at points on this. I like the pseudo post-rock tendencies they dabble in on here too. They do still expand their sound a little bit, but they do more reflecting than expanding. And I personally don't have a huge problem with that. Not that I hated their last couple of records, but I like that this is more stylistically akin to their mathy stuff, their more mathy metalcore stuff. I enjoy that. And I walked away thoroughly impressed on this thing. I think the vocals on this thing are just fucking jagged. Everything about this record is so jagged at points that it warmed my heart, and it scratched an itch that I didn't think was going to be scratched, and I think it's another reason why I really enjoy this thing, because I love this kind of stuff, and while there are other bands out there that make it, it's hard to find one that you genuinely love, and bands that you genuinely love that do it consistently, and Converge have always been a band like that, and that's why I was glad that this thing came out, and that it did not fail to meet Converge's level of greatness. So I talked about this on the podcast, and I tweeted out what people thought my album of the year was going to be, and people thought it was going to be this, and that's understandable. I don't normally give out 10s, and I gave out 2 this year, this and my number 1 pick. But this record fucking wowed me. It was one of the things I desperately needed this year, and again, a year where everything was so fucking dark and bleak and depressing, and everyone was so absorbed in politics, and there's a lot of political albums on my list, but this was a nice escape from American politics. It was just noisy, sporadic, just fucking chaos. Every song in here sounds like being plucked from a... And I've used this analogy every time I talk about this record, but it makes sense to me. It's like someone threw you in a situation that's already happening, and you're just watching it happen. Like, you're thrown in the middle of a gunfight that happened 5 minutes ago, and you're watching the preceding 7 minutes as everyone mows each other down, and you're kind of just amidst the chaos. There are some really beautiful and serene moments and more subdued moments, or less sonically challenging, but they still in themselves have this level of intricacy in them that is refreshing to me, and it's very pleasing to hear. I found myself revisiting this thing a lot more than I even thought I would. I had friends that gave this praise, and that's the reason why I checked it out, but I was so absorbed in this thing. I love the synth choices, I love the atmosphere, and I love the tone of this record. It ticks a lot of buttons for me that I again, was kind of needing ticked this year. Something Political was the option that lost. It came in last place in the vote, in the poll that I ran, and it's ironic because not American politics, but this thing is super British, and again, it was something I needed. You know, this year was so hard to get around without hearing somebody complain about something political in the state of the country and the people in the country, and it's fucking exhausting. It's so goddamn exhausting to be around and to be an internet person in this day and age, because all you fucking hear is people yell about negative shit in your country, and it's like, I need a break. I need a break from America for a bit. And I found that at its most pleasing through some Brits who are just super classic punk, super political, super ragtag, and it was so nice to see the political landscape told through the seedy underbelly of another country. I love the atmosphere on this thing. I love the tone. I love that it's so British. It hurts. It's great. It's a lovely, lovely collection of some classic punk jams that I, again, like Blanck Mass, was very surprised to have enjoyed, because I like punk. I'm a pretty avid punk fan. I don't talk about punk much, but I do enjoy a good punk album, and it's a really odd way to talk about it, but I was surprised by how much I liked this punk album. I like its snotty attitude. I like its singer's just unabashed way of how he sings. I like that it's so kind of cobbled together. It's just so just messy. It's so messy and dirty and gritty, and that's what I fucking love about it, you know? And that's what drew me to it. And that's what kept me coming back. It was a break from my world, and I got to just rough it up for a little while with some true punks, mate. It was cool. It was a cool record, and I fucking love this thing. And I hope that if you have checked it out, you love it too. And if not, I hope you do check it out and check out any of these albums that were on my list that you haven't heard. But either way, that's my list. So if you would like to see my top 50 albums of the year for this year, because I did do a top 50, and on that list that weren't in this video are the new Kesha, the new LCD Sound System, the new Gorillaz, the new Kendrick Lamar, the new Turnover, Chelsea Wolfe, the other 2 Brockhampton albums that came out this year, and a whole bunch of other duos like Foxygen and 68. If you want to see where those albums laid on my top 50, linked in the description is my Rate Your Music list, where all of those albums lie, along with a small little write-up on why it's on my list. I'm gonna go. This is 30 minutes I have to edit down. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this small list month that I pulled together. I'm hoping to do more videos in 2018. I felt like this was a good way to get me back into the swing of things. But I'm gonna go. I have been ViralRak. You guys are today's Lives and Situations, and I'll see you next year.